Hi, today I would like to talk a little bit about the FM synth on the Deluge. It's something that I have often overlooked in the past, but recently I've been using it more often, and I think it's quite capable of producing some interesting sounds that wouldn't be possible with the subtractive synth. So first I want to go over the relevant controls for the FM synth. They're mostly in the oscillator section right here. And then I'm just going to put together some patches, and who knows, maybe I'll even end up with some interesting music at the end of this. So I'm going to make a new synth here. I'm going to press the synth mode shortcut, and I'll set this to FM. So now we get this sine wave, which is coming from oscillator 1. And there's no FM modulation applied yet. It's just a sine wave. So let's maybe look at the controls for oscillator 1 here from bottom to top. Volume is pretty self-explanatory. It just makes it quieter and louder. And then the transpose, that's the pitch. Type is not available for the FM synth. The pulse width is also not available for the FM synth. And then the re-trigger phase. This can be quite useful for the FM synth because as you can hear, we get this clicking sometimes with just the pure sine wave. This is because the sine wave doesn't always start at a zero crossing. And if we turn this to 0, just that is going to be the case. This is why the clicking is gone. Now, if I increase this, the sine wave gets re-triggered each time I press a key as well, but not at 0. Here it's at 40 degrees. So there's going to be a little bit of a click, but it's going to be the same each time. I want this to be at 0 though. And then lastly, there's a feedback control, meaning there's going to be FM modulation from the oscillator itself. The output of oscillator 1 is fed back into the oscillator, modulating its frequency. And this is what the feedback sounds like. Adds a bunch of harmonics to the sound, makes it sound more like a sawtooth wave. For comparison, maybe let's listen to a sawtooth real quick. So I'm gonna make this new synth one more time, and I'll set this to a sawtooth. So you can hear this is very similar. I'll set this back to a FM synth. Set the re-trigger phase to 0 and increase the feedback. So this is the FM sine with the feedback all the way up again. Sounds pretty much like a sawtooth. Now the controls for oscillator 2 are identical for FM mod 1 and 2. They're also almost identical with one exception. For FM mod 2. We get to choose the destination of the modulator. We can decide whether the modulator should affect the carrier, meaning oscillator 1 and 2, or mod 1, meaning this guy FM mod 1 here. Yeah, let's maybe have a listen to what this sounds like as well. I'll dial down the feedback again so we can hear the effect it has. And now I'm going to dial up the level of FM mod 1. The pitch of FM mod 1 is now set to 0, meaning it has the same pitch as oscillator 1. And if I increase this, I can set it to different intervals. If you're not familiar with the intervals in semitones, good ones are octaves, meaning just all multiple of 12s. They sound very harmonic, or -12 or an octave below. And 7 is a fifth. That's also something that usually sounds pretty good. And then the next one in line would be a third above an octave, which is 16. And then there's a bunch of really inharmonic ones. Also good to know, if you're not familiar with how that works, once you go into the transpose menu, you get to adjust the pitch in semitones. If you want to make finer adjustments, just turn this upper left scroll knob here, and then you can move to the next decimal point. Or even the last one for just some slight detuning, which can be really cool with the FM thing. Let's have a listen what this sounds like if I bring FM mod 2 in, and then maybe compare the destination, what this does. So right now it's modulating mod 1 because that's what I set it to earlier. If I go back to the carrier, modulator 2, which has a frequency 1 octave below oscillator 1, is now affecting oscillator 1 directly. If I set it to mod 1, it is affecting FM mod 1, and then FM mod 1 is modulating the frequency of the two oscillators. So I think I've got the most important things covered. So let's make some patches now. I'm back to the plain sine wave, and I'm gonna start with modulating this oscillator 1 with FM mod 1. Now, one thing I can do is, instead of just having the level of FM mod at the same amplitude all the time, I can modulate this with an envelope. While this guy is blinking, I'm just gonna press Shift and envelope 2, and then increase this a bit. So now, this envelope 2 is affecting the amount of FM mod 1. One thing to keep in mind here is that envelopes of the Deluge are bipolar, meaning with the sustain at 25, which is what it is set to by default. The sustain stage is going to be at the FM mod level, which we have set here, so 15 in this case. In the beginning, it's going to go higher, and after I release the key and it goes to the release stage, it's going to go lower than 15. Oftentimes, I think it's nice to set this to something lower than 25. So we get a lot, or quite a lot more modulation in the beginning, and then it goes somewhere close to 0. So I'm going to make this envelope shorter, set the attack to 0, and the decay to something like 2. And then maybe the amp envelope. I'm going to add some release to this. We get a nice percussive, plucky sound. Let's maybe modulate the oscillator 1 with FM mod 2 as well, a little bit. I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm also going to use envelope 2 for the level of modulator 2. And then I'm going to adjust the frequency of mod 2. So this currently is set to a octave below the pitch of oscillator 1. And I'm going to see what a fifth below sounds like. Fourth. A third above. Fourth. Fifth. An octave above. Octave and a third. This maybe with the level dialed back. Yeah, why not? And maybe for the amp envelope, I'm going to get rid of the sustain altogether and shorter decay. Now the level of mod 1, I'll dial this back also. Cool. Now I'm going to enter a quick sequence. So we got something to listen to. Maybe. I'm going to bring in oscillator 2 because I want the pitch to be a bit more clear. So I'm maybe going to set this to 1 octave above oscillator 1. And then now keep in mind, FM mod 1 and 2 are always also going to modulate oscillator 2. There's no way to only modulate oscillator 1 once the level of FM mod 1 and 2 are up there, affecting both. Now, one thing that's always nice, I think, with those FM sounds is using velocity for the level amount. So I'm going to do this for FM mod 2 here. I'm going to press the shortcut for FM mod 2 and then the shortcut for velocity. So now the velocity setting of each note is going to affect the level of FM mod 2. So I'm going to get rid of the volume For the velocity, this by default is set to 50, and I'm just going to go all the way to 0. So now all the notes, regardless of the velocity, are going to be the same volume, but the FM mod level is going to change. So if I set this to something really low and this to something really high, we should be able to hear the difference. Yeah. Maybe go even more extreme. I'm going to do the same thing for FM mod 1. And maybe for FM mod 2, I'm going to increase this a bit. Now it's maybe a bit much, so I'm going to decrease it again. It's cool because we get a really soft sound and a really harsh sound within the same patch. So, for example, I could add some more notes here with a really low velocity, approaching this note, and maybe this is going to be soft again. I'm going to increase the decay time a bit for the envelope 2. And then I'm going to decrease this level. And then I want some more conservative ratios here. Maybe I'm going to set this to this 5th after all. Yeah, this is nicer. Maybe add some randomization to the decay of the amp envelope. And I'm going to make the decay shorter again. I have to set the retrigger phase for oscillator 2 to 0 as well, because otherwise there's going to be lots of clicking. And now I'm going to maybe make the release, the altogether release, a bit shorter, and the decay also. Or longer. This is nice, a kind of a harp-like sound. Let's maybe add some reverb to this. Cool. And now maybe I'm going to add a little bit of vibrato to this. Cool. So maybe let's move on to a next patch. Making a new synth again. And I'll set it to FM. I'm going to set the retrigger phase to 0 here again, so I don't have any clicking. And now maybe I'm going to make just a real simple bass sound. And I'm just going to increase this FM mod 2 a bit. This is already set to -12, an octave below oscillator 1. And again, I want to modulate this with an envelope, with the short attack and decay. So my bass sound gets some attack. Maybe I have to increase this a bit. Make the decay shorter. No, it's too much. Now for FM mod 1, I'm going to set this to 5th and see what that sounds like. And here especially, I only want it to be in the beginning, so I'm going to modulate this with envelope 2 as well. And then I'm going to bring in oscillator 2 and tune this to something weird. This sounds nice. I have to set the re-trigger phase of oscillator 2 to 0 as well. And now I'm just gonna punch in a root note here. Maybe for some movement, I'm gonna modulate the FM mod 1 amount, which is the 5th, with the LFO2. Can't really hear a whole lot of that. We'll increase the level a bit. And maybe the feedback of oscillator 2 with LFO1. Well, I'm gonna have a listen real quick what the feedback does here. And on oscillator 1. Oh, this is nice. So I'm gonna give this to LFO1. And make LFO1 slower. I'm gonna make a chord progression here. Maybe 4 chords and 2 bars for each one. Oh, that's an odd note, maybe this one. Yeah, why not? So let's move on to a new sound. Maybe something percussive again, just because it's fun to do with the FM. So I'm gonna go synth mode, FM again. And this time I'm thinking I'm gonna go a bit more crazy. Dial this up. Give this to the envelope. Make it short. And now I'm gonna modulate the weird ratio of FM mod 1 with FM mod 2. Also some envelope mod here. Maybe it's too weird. Well, I'm gonna try and see if I can make this work. Gonna dial down the sustain here. Maybe I can make. I'll increase the release on the amp a bit. Oscillator 2. Maybe I'm gonna set this to something. Or just the 5th. Maybe some feedback. Or I'm gonna use the envelope 2 now to modulate the feedback. I have to increase this a little bit, otherwise it's not doing anything. What's that? I'm sure reverb sounds good on this. I'm going to use velocity again here, this time for the feedback. Even faster, or triplets. Maybe also velocity on the FM amount. Ooh, this is nice. I'm gonna turn this guy off for a second. Yeah, this is nice. I'm gonna go for something more simple, just so it doesn't take hours to sequence. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to make this shorter, and now I can copy it and then just make some adjustments for the different chords. Gonna go all off beats here. Gonna decrease the sustain of the amp. So now I'm hoping this is going to work with this other guy. Not so well. I'm going to adjust this guy a little bit. Try a longer attack for the amp. This is nice. Maybe a little more vibrato. And just make it quieter. I think I can live with what I've got so far. So next I'm gonna maybe try and make a glassy kind of pad. So I'm making a new synth yet again. Set it to FM. And this time I just want to have nice harmonics in there. So I'll set this to a third maybe. And this I'll set to a fifth. Maybe a fifth, the 1 octave higher. And then oscillator 2 itself, I'm gonna set also to a fifth. And maybe detune it a bit. I'm gonna set the bass start to 0. And then here I will make a slow attack for the amp. And then maybe modulate the two modulators with an envelope 2, but this time also with a slow attack and a longer decay. Release also. Maybe long. I move this up. add some vibrato. I'll make it slower. Now something is making the sound out of tune. This guy. Gonna try LFO modulation on FM 2. LFO 2 maybe. And I'm gonna try yet another frequency for this. Reverb. Yeah, it just works better with those more normal frequencies. So let's see how this fits into what I've got here. Like a nice pedal note would be cool here, I'm guessing. Or just a slow melody. And that's what I'm gonna try here. This. This is where I wanted it. Yeah. FM synthesis. It's for me at least, it's a lot of trial and error, but sometimes really good errors happen, and it turns into beautiful sounds, or at least interesting ones. I think I'm gonna add some drums here now because why not? It's always fun. Now I feel like I still need another synth to play some lead on top of this, so. Yeah, cool. I leave it at this because this is long enough as is, and I will just try to perform a tiny little bit on this. I hope you enjoyed this, and thanks a lot for watching.